All right. Well, let's see if it'll actually work this time. Probably not. The app crashed on me the first time for some reason. That's literally never happened before. The second time, I got a phone call, and that froze it. So I have notifications turned off now, and barring any other ridiculously stupid thing, we should be okay now. So anyway, I'm going to leave the other ones up because I'm not going to explain myself and ramble for another 10 or 15 minutes since we've already been through that. So if you just came to this stream, there's two other streams that were right before it that you'll probably want to check out first because that kind of explains everything that's going on. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to continue from the other stream here. First thing I'm going to do is sharpen my pencil. Oh, and for future reference, whenever a stream crashes, I know before anybody else does. So appreciate all the notifications in the chat are letting me know, but every time something borks up, believe me, I know about it. So anyway, like I was saying, I'm going to go with a different layout on this one. I've been going with, on my ASIMs, I've been going 5 by 3.5 by 2.5. So it's kind of it's borderline weak pin position. It's a pretty strong, continuous PSA to pat position, and it's a fairly dynamic slash flippy pin buffer. And what I'm finding though, and what's been a problem on some of the stronger stuff, on some of the weaker stuff, it tends to work out. But what I'm finding is that the stronger balls or the stronger shelled balls particularly are having trouble kind of straightening out. So it's too much too early, and I've had a lot of success with here recently with pin in the ring drillings. Most notably, I just re-drilled my Halo Burn, and that one looked really, really good. My UC2 looks great, but again, it's a weaker shell, so it's something I can kind of hit up on. Some of the other ones that I haven't had great luck with are my Marvel Max Force, which I had that on the stream the other day, and it looked pretty good. I tried it in League last night, and it just would get to the spot no matter whether I was playing straight or inside a little bit. It wanted to straighten out just a little bit too much, and that was costing me a lot of hit. The Axiom Pearl, those have done the same thing. They kind of get there, and it's just too much too early. So I've had trouble with that on some other ASIMs too. The parallax effect was, I think, really, really suffered from that strong of a layout being that strong of a ball. But the Halo Burn looks really good. The Idle Synergy, even though it is a cleaner cover, it allows me to play straighter. So I've got that pin and ring. Anybody that's watched my Trend versus High Road Pearl rated Rumble that I had here yesterday, I think, or this morning or something like that, the High Road Pearl is pin and ring. And so that's what I'm going to do for the Code Zero here and the Dark Code. Plus, I'm going to try it on the UFO Alert. I think going pin up. And here recently, too, on the Zen, it looked great when I was filming for it. And then I've had it out 3, 4, 5 times here in the last couple weeks since I made the video, and it just hasn't come close to matching up anywhere. And so I think a big part of that's the layout. It's just everything's happening way too close to the foul line. So I'm going to do just a little bit weaker layout. It's going to be 4 3/4 by 3.5 by 3.5, and that doesn't sound like a big difference from 5 by 3.5 by 2.5. I'm still keeping the PSA to PAP in a very strong place. If it gets too long, if it gets like up in the 5 range, it kind of makes the ball lope. And if it's too short, it makes it just kind of really rolly. I still want a more dynamic motion in the mid lane, because that's the one thing that I've identified that looks great on. Did I lose a light here? Oh, I need to charge that too later. That's the one thing that has been a constant between everything else is that whether I've gone pin down, I think I have tried an ASIM pin down. I can't remember or not, but the one thing that's been constant is I really like that PSA to PAP location. Going pin in the ring reduces the pin buffer. It takes it up from 2.5 to 3.5. So I like pin in finger hole layouts because most of the time you're either going pin up or you're going pin down. Well, that's a pretty big variance most of the time. For me, that's like 2 or 2.5, all the way up to probably 4.5, just to get it out of the kind of safe zone around the pin. If you're drilling close to the pin, you either want to stay away from it or you just want to drill it out. Drilling kind of into it or right next to it is just a recipe for disaster. I definitely not recommend that. But by going 2.5 on that, it's not like I go full pin down, but I'm not going full pin up either. So I kind of split the difference. So, and that allows me to, when you go pin up, it lowers the RG and it raises the differential, so it just makes the ball want to rev and roll sooner, plus it makes it more dynamic, more aggressive. It does not make the ball go longer. It makes it stronger, more dynamic, but it does not make it go longer. If anything, it makes it earlier. Pin down will drop, or it'll raise the RG and drop the differential, so it makes the ball want to go a little bit longer and be a little bit blendier down lane. Well, I don't want to go full long and blend, and I don't want to go. It's been kind of up in the air on that layout. So this is the perfect way to split the difference. It also allows me to go a little bit stronger on the pin position, which will make the ball more naturally continuous. So if I go a little bit weaker on the pin buffer, then I can go a little bit stronger on the actual pin to pap. So, I mean, this is definitely all Greek, I'm sure, to a lot of you, but it should, basically the idea with this is it's going to calm the ball down, it's going to calm the reaction down just a little bit, and make it a little bit more naturally continuous. That's kind of the idea, because everything else has been a little bit too close to the foul line, a little bit too aggressive, and I want to just push it a little bit closer down lane. Like I said, I did this with my Halo burn and it looked fantastic. So, if you haven't seen this before, I'm using Storm's new arc ruler. So what this is it's kind of like a compass. This has the little pin on it there that you'll put in the center of the pin or the center of the PSA or wherever you're measuring from. And then you can see that it's got the numbers on there. And there's a hole every 1/4 inch. So since I'm going to be doing 4 3/4 inch pin to begin with, that's going to go right there in the 4 3/4 hole, basically. For people who like to do really, really obnoxious things like 4 and 17 30-seconds pin length, you'll need a compass for that. This just goes every 1/4 inch. Realistically speaking, you can't feel it. You really can't even feel it. You can't feel a 1/4 inch very much, and most of the time it takes a 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch difference before you're really ever going to feel it, unless you average 230. So that is Storm's arc ruler. It's very simple, very basic. Obviously, also pretty cheap too. The compasses can get quite expensive, but these are handy, effective, efficient, whatever else. So all I do once again is I put the pin in the center of the pin. I want 4 3/4, so I'm going to use that to make my arc. And I guess since I'm going 3.5 on the PSA to PAP, so this is the little dot here that I'm going to use for that. I'm going 3.5 on the PSA to PAP, so I'm going to put the pin in the marker, find the 3.5. And there's my arc there. And I'm going 3.5 on the pin buffer, which should put this right, which should fit my ring finger right in the pin there. So for the storm layout system, wherever I make this arc at, 2.5. What we're going to do here is this just needs to, this intersection right here needs to, I need to make a line from that to the very outside edge of this arc. So what I'm going to do, line my prosect up. I'm going to find the very outside edge of this arc, which is right there. That coincides right there. So, and this is going to be for you dual angle fans. This is basically my vertical axis line. So from there, this is my positive axis point. So I believe I am either a half down or a 3/4 down. Let me measure it with half down first. Half down, or a half up rather, so you measure backwards. And 5 3/8 over. Make my lines here. Alright, so 2 and let's see. So fingers should go. Oh, I meant, yeah, somebody probably could have told me that. I don't know why I did a 2.5. I was wondering why that was looking weird. Everybody's probably yelling at me in the chat that I'm not reading while I'm doing this. Yeah, I'm just on autopilot because my pin-up layout, I'll just redo the whole thing. My pin-up layouts are also, I've been using a 2.5 pin buffer for everything, so I just kind of defaulted to 2.5, even though I'm going for 3.5. So it should be 4 and 3/4. So, and I can use this as a demonstration again. So storm arc ruler, very helpful, very fun. 4 3/4. So I kind of know about where this arc is going to be at anyway. Still doing 3.5 for the PSA to pat distance. So we'll find my 3.5 again. That's right there. And now I'm not going to screw this up this time. 3.5 pin buffer, not 2.5. So 3.5 once again. Oh, hey, that. If you'd hold it there. Alright, that looks better. Now, okay, I think this is actually going to turn out right this time. Once again, this is your positive axis point. And where the fingers go is not a layout. The layout tells you where to drill the fingers. So, this is why I bucked putting a layout photo in my videos for so long, because it's not a layout photo. Where the finger holes are at tells you nothing. Absolutely nothing without knowing someone's positive axis point. So this vertical axis line, once again, I think I'm I think I'm 5 3/8 over and a half up. So, no, actually Angel's a half up. I'm 3/4 up. So I measure 3/4 down. Every time you're doing a layout, if your axis point is 5 3/8 over and 3/4 up, you will measure 3/4 down and then 5 3/8 back over. boy howdy, this looks like this is going to work out this time. Sharpen my pencil again. Get all this nonsense off of my always important to scrape all the chalk residue off of the Prosect. Very helpful. All right, so basically, then to find the fingers, my span is 4 16ths by 4 1/2. So I'm just going to measure, 2 1/4 up basically to find my where my fingers should go. All right. So that's going to put the pen directly in my ring finger. So once again, whenever you're drilling near the pin, around the pin, you either want to be a good 3/4 of an inch away from it. So if you're drilling pin down, fingers need to be up here. If you're drilling pin up, put the fingers down here. If you're getting close to the pin, you might as well just adjust it enough to get the pin out, because all it's going to do if you drill close to the pin, it's eventually going to crack. It's just going to eventually crack. And then somebody's going to complain about something that was, once again, completely preventable. So that's just what's going to happen. So by doing this, once again, I split the difference between pin up and down. It's not quite as early and aggressive or dynamic as pin up, but it's not quite as long and slow as pin down. So this is kind of a happy medium that I don't think enough people consider, because they either want, I want pin up or I want pin down. They don't consider, it's like, okay, we'll just drill either, if you have a shorter, and it depends on what your positive axis point is too. If you have something wild, like, 4 over and 1.5 inches up, it might give you a weird layout. But since I've got more of a normal positive axis point, this just works out. James actually does a lot of stuff in his middle finger, so this would kind of, instead of the ring finger for lefty, he would put the pin in his middle finger, which essentially gives him similar layouts to what I'm doing here. It's just I'm drilling the ring finger out where he would drill the middle finger out. So this one's ready to go. Once again, lots of grease pencil on there. But yeah, I like it. So this is going to kind of be the new layout, kind of my new default layout that I'm going to be using going forward. So I'll go on ahead and fix the camera here in a second. Am I missing anything in the... Alright, turn my lights on here, and then that I need to plug in. Alright, lights, camera, action. .31 30-seconds bit is what everybody uses for most finger inserts. If you have smaller sized inserts, you'll use a 7/8 bit if memory serves me correctly. And then the larger finger inserts need 1 inch and 1/32. Right now I'm just making sure that the ball is lined up right. My fingers are 3/8 laterally, both sides, so 3/8 left, 3/8 right, and then an 1/8 reverse. Makes them quite comfortable. Sorry, this is going to be loud. So one thing is I really like this new shop vac that I got, but it's a lot louder than the old one. So bear with me. I'll try to go quickly. Alright, so we have drilled the pin out. The pins drill a little bit different. Sometimes they're a little bit harder than the ball is, and so if the bits aren't sharp, it kind of wants to, shove the bit one way or the other. And as I said earlier, I am 4 9/16 full span ring to thumb and 4.5 middle finger to thumb. But the differences in the length difference in my spans is made up for by the differences in the grip sizes. The ring finger is a little bit smaller than the middle finger, so even though the middle finger distance is shorter, the grip's bigger. This one's longer, but it's smaller, and so all I have to do is just, move this straight across and drill them on the same line. And so this span, everything will end up matching. So I never have to move, adjust, whatever else. This will drill right on the line, and then so I don't have to adjust it forwards, backwards. It'll adjust right on the line, and then I'll put the grips in, and it'll be fine. So. ahead and get my grips out. Alright, so once again, even though where I drill the hole should create the same span from one side to the other, one grip is smaller than the other, so the difference is offset, and so by the extra thickness of this grip, it'll naturally make this span a little bit longer, so, or actually I'm not, I'm 4 9/16 by 4.5 plus, so, which is basically 4 17/32. It's just easier to remember it as plus rather than however many 30 seconds it is, which is just obnoxious. So we'll just measure to 4 9/16. I'm just going to verify that this is 4.5 plus a 32nd. Make my line here. Double check again that the line is in the right spot. That looks good. That also looks good. I don't use any interchangeable thumb systems because my thumb is round. So I don't have an oval thumb hole, and not having an oval thumb hole I don't really have any need for interchangeables. Interchangeables are for people who either go through a lot of bowling balls or who have trouble duplicating a fit, or, you know, for the tour players that don't have time to kind of, you know, they know that the way that they like their thumb to feel, they don't have time. Some of them drill, you know, 5-10 balls in a week, depending on how long they bowl. And so you're not going to, I mean, if it takes you 10 or 15 minutes to finish your thumb hole the way that you like it, you don't have time to do that for every single ball drilling 5 or 10 balls a week. It's just done. So, but mine is extremely, extremely easy. It takes me about 10 seconds to finish my thumb because I do just a little bit of bevel at the top. It's round, so there's nothing to, and then normally I put a piece of white tape in the front and 2 or 3 pieces of black tape in the back just to kind of get it figured out, but most of the time it's fairly simple. So it looks like I have this lined up right, but I am just going to get kind of a starter cut. So I just drilled down far enough to where the outside edge of the bit creates a little edge for me to measure off of. So I'm going to measure to that line to make sure that the span is right. So I do kind of, I guess you could say I kind of triple check everything. So that looks good. Alright, we're good. So now that I've got that sorted out, I'm going to use the 1 1/8" bit to pilot with. My thumb hole is 27/32 round, by the way, which is pretty small. Alright, so we use an 1 1/8" bit to pilot with. The actual slug, the size of hole I need to get the slug in there is 1 1/4". But if you use a smaller size bit to pilot with, then you can save a lot of wear and tear on the larger bit, the one the heavier use bit, so it stays sharper longer. And that can have something to do with how easy it is or how difficult it is to get the thumb hole in and out. Once your bit starts dulling, the cut isn't as true, and so it can create some extra friction and not quite get the hole quite big enough. It's just microns. It's not very much, but it's enough to snug it up enough to get the slug stuck halfway down. So gotta figure out, this is kind of a weird area. I want to try to match the ball. I'm probably gonna go with a purple slug. I think it's in that patch of kind of whitish silver, but if I use a white one, we're gonna be able to see it. I don't necessarily want to see the slug. Probably going to go purple here. Anything else you'd be able to see? I'm not really into that, so not anymore. I kind of like doing it on solid color balls, but of course you're never going to see it on this one with as swirly as it is. So I'm just going to check my depths here to make sure that we're square. 6 1/2, 6 1/2. Easier with this bit here. Now I'll show you the other trick I kind of use here. So what I do is, see this little groove in the side here? It's basically called a vent slit. It kind of allows air to escape, and when you're putting the slug in, but it also allows or it prevents a vacuum from any kind of vacuum suction on your thumb on release. So sometimes there is such a thing as a thumb hole fitting too well. So shave down. So what I'm going to do here is, you see it's just sharp edges straight up and down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to buzz the edge. So what this is going to do is with that hard edge on it there, if I just left the hard edge on it, when I put the glue in the thumb hole, the sharp edges are just going to scrape all the glue off the side and scrape it all the way to the bottom of the hole. So by rounding the bottom of it, it kind of allows the glue to get in between, or to stay in between the side of the slug and the side of the ball in the thumb hole. So, tricks. Now, with as tight as this ends up fitting, the glue is really just more for lubrication than anything. You don't really need the glue to hold the slug in the thumb hole because it's just not gonna go anywhere. I drill the hole just a little bit shallower than the slug is long because I want to bottom the slug out. If you just kind of drill the hole deep enough and push the slug in until you get it where you want it, if it's not bottomed out, meaning that you push the slug in as far as it'll go, the idea is to leave, I don't know, just a little bit on top so that you cut that off flush with the ball. Otherwise, the ball hits something funny back in the pit. If you've ever had a slug drop, or where the slug goes further down than the top of being flush with the top of the ball, that's very, very poor workmanship. So that shouldn't, it's something that shouldn't happen. Alright, so that's what we were meaning to do. I got the slug down there just absolutely as far as it'll go, so it's bottomed out at the bottom of the hole, so all I have to do is just shave the top of it off. I do that with a router bit. I have two different sizes of router bits. This is a 3-inch router bit that I used contoured perfectly to the shape of the ball. This one I use for plug cutting because when you're cutting finger plug, you need it wide enough to cut all that at the same time. But they also have this little cute 2-incher here that's really, really good for just cutting slugs and the top of interchangeables off. So, most important thing, reset pitches to 0. Because if you don't, if you don't reset the pitches to 0 and it's too far one way or the other, well, you're going to end up cutting into the ball on one side and not cutting down on the other side of the ball. So most important thing that you will, if you ever get into pro shop work or if you've ever done it before, every single pro shop operator, employee, whatever else in history has forgotten to reset the pitches at least once. I guarantee it. No one has ever worked in a pro shop and remembered to reset the pitches every single time before they cut the top of a switch grip or a slug off. It has never happened. Now, an easy rule of thumb to watch for, it's very easy to feel the resistance on the lever here when you're getting close onto the ball, but all you have to do is watch the grease pencil lines. As soon as the grease pencil lines start disappearing, you're close. actually, on all my rambling and blathering, I forgot a really important step, which is drilling the thumb hole. My gosh, this feels wrong. I thought this bit was a whole lot sharper than this. Which this makes it awfully convenient. All I have to do is take it right back to the center of this hole. Set my pitches back in and just drill the hole. Simple. Alright, now we can go back to the cute little router bit and reset the pitches. Once again, most important part. And this, when these are brand new, they're really crazy, ridiculously sharp. There's no way to not shave part of the ball. Shave a little bit off when you get close, because it's just gonna cut through everything. This one is in a perfect spot. I probably cut 30-ish slugs with it. I've cut a couple of thumb holes, a couple of thumb hole plugs with it, because that'll dull it up pretty quick. So this is kind of perfect, where it's still sharp enough to get it cut, but not, give me a little bit of flexibility or wiggle room or forgiveness at the top of the hole. I could still cut the living crap out of it, but so that's done. That also will tell you how good your pitches are set at, because every once in a while, I mean, this is a big machine, there's lots of moving parts, stuff can kind of shift, get out of calibration a little bit, but this lets me know that I was a little heavy on the back side here first before it finished off on this side, but I mean, if you're like that's like 2 or 3 thousandths off, so that's virtually perfect. So we went ahead and move back over here and finish her off. First things first, all the grease pencil lines come off. Because if you do get any water in the water residue, whatever else in the finger holes, you got to buzz them anyway. So it's easier to get the grease pencil lines off first. Then what I do is I have kind of a hybrid vacuum grip. So the the inserts are just a little too small. They're probably like a half size too small. And with this, I mean, that's just not going to happen. So I have to open those up. You always want to bevel the tops of the finger holes no matter what anyway. Because when they're this sharp, you know, if I would take something and start hitting on that edge, it's not going to take a whole lot of resistance before that edge starts rounding, dulling, or if something sharp enough hits it, that'll make it crack. So it's also, you know, what we call in bridge inspection language, a stress riser. It's a weaker point that is going to take less force for that point to fail, basically. So this is a weak point in the hole. So if you've ever seen the fingers, you know, normally when a ball cracks, it cracks from one of the fingers. Either because there's not enough bevel or the glue's too high up in the cover stock, whatever else, but it's a stress point on the bowling ball. So you want to reduce, or you want to soften, or you want to make that as strong as possible. So if you round it out, it spreads the impact out. So that's why you always want to bevel the top of finger holes. However, I go just a little bit of a step beyond that. So I need to open the fingers up a little bit too, because both of my finger grips are a little small. But I do that mostly on top, because if you look at your finger, the fleshy part's kind of right up here at top. The whitest part of your finger is right there at the knuckle. So I hate having bigger grips to where I'm kind of swimming down here, but fits up here at the knuckle. I don't like that. I want it to fit uniformly the whole way up. So I will bevel the top extra so that the grip form fits my finger better. Plus that gives you a little bit of flex at the top of the hole, just in case, you know, we're coming into summer in the northern hemisphere here. That just gives you more flexibility at the top of the hole. It will still snug up on your fingers if your hand's a little small or if it's cold outside, or if your hand swells up a little bit, it'll give you a little bit more flex at the top of the hole, because the grip is flexible enough to number one, suction onto you, but also give and flex a little bit if you swell up. So I'm going to grab another ball here real quick that feels good so that I can kind of compare. So I want to make sure that they fit right before I glue them in, because my hands could be a little swollen or small right now. So grab something real quick. My ProMotion's actually the one that fits the best. Plus these fingers I've used this ball again since I drilled it a little over a year ago. So these fingers fit the best. They're a little snug right now, but that gives me a frame of reference. But again, they're snug. All I have to do is a little bit of extra wiggling and they're in. So instead of having a firmer edge on that hole, giving me less room or flexibility up top, even though my hand's a little swollen right now apparently, it's all good. So what I will do, I missed all. What are you doing, Missile Baby? I missed all. I know, baby. So just put the grip on my finger, I push it down in there, feel where it snugs up. Still feels just a little bit snug at the top, so. That probably ought to do the trick, so I think we're done with that. Yep, that one should be okay. So go ahead and do the middle finger. Same deal. That's still snug. Probably need to change the sanding pad on my sander here, but when they do wear out a little bit, it gives you a little bit more control. Once you put a new one on there, it just digs stuff out super fast. So this way it takes a little bit longer, but it also gives me a little bit more control over how big the hole gets and how fast it gets there. So, all right, that snugs up right on the knuckle like it should, so I think that we're going to be pretty good there. So sometimes it fakes me out. Sometimes it feels okay until I get it glued in there, and then it feels a little tighter. I can always fix that, but that kind of feels like it's snugging up right where it should. So I'm going to go on ahead and do the thumb here. Show you how. And my thumb's done. So I will glue the grips in. I always start with the inset or the bridge, because I want to make sure that the grips get flush. So I will line them up flush with the top of the bridge. And then I only need just a couple drops on either side. This stuff glues pretty good, and if you get the grip glued in right first, it'll hold. That little dab down inside the finger hole spreads out quite a bit more than you would think it would. So I'm just gonna make sure that that gets spread out and seated. Same thing, the ring finger. And I'm putting the glue down inside the hole underneath the cover stock. So I'm actually gluing the grip to the filler material that's further down inside of the finger hole. Most cover stocks are 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch thick, so not very thick, but they expand and contract at a different rate than the glue does. And so when it gets hot or cold outside, when it gets hot or cold inside, everything is subject to expansion and contraction. So a bowling ball will swell and shrink just like everything else does. Matter of fact, in bridges, if you've ever seen the different seams or the joints, if you've been on a longer bridge and you feel the thump every so often of the little joints combining the sections of the bridge together, those sections are there to allow the bridge to expand and contract without trying to rip it out of the, push the ends or, pull them in. So, and it's the same thing. This can be like watering concrete. If you get it too far up in the cover stock around the top of the holes, if you've ever seen the circular cracking around the top of the finger holes, most of the time that's caused by too much glue and too much glue up around the top of the finger hole. Plus, if you don't glue at the top of the finger hole, that also gives you the flexibility at the top. It holds it down lower, but it gives you the flex room at the top so that you're not spreading the grip out. That one's done. And some people might ask, does it really take this long to drill a bowling ball? And the answer is no, it doesn't. But if you want to do it right, it normally takes me about 15 to 20 minutes to drill one of my own bowling balls, and there's not a whole lot to it. I don't have an interchangeable thumb. I don't do true vacuum grips. But as you can see here now at the top of the holes, since I haven't glued the grips to the top of the hole, so you see I've got the flexibility here for it to still kind of suction onto my finger here. But if my finger swells up any at all, this grip can now have room to expand a little bit at the top where I really need it to. So you can also see that the top of the grips are nice and flush with the ball surface. So that prevents the grips from catching and getting damaged any more than they have to. But once again, like I said, they're not coming out. They're not coming out. They're glued in there just fine. And actually you can kind of see down in the hole, that little kind of darkened section right there, that's where the glue's at. In this finger hole anyway. So that's where the glue's at. I just put a couple drops down in there, but it spreads out quite a bit. So yeah, flexibility on top of the grips. This is a whole lot of damage prevention on top up here as well. With the edge being rounded, it spreads out any kind of impact a whole lot more. And then down on the thumb, I don't do a whole lot. I just kind of take the edge off. So, and we're done here. So my hand's a little big right now. The fingers are a little hard going in the pro motion, but they're a little hard going in this too. So once my hand settles down here, we're going to be in business. So we're going to move on to some plug work here and hope I don't screw that up again. I'm going to leave that hanging out right there. I'm going to have to turn the lights back on. I'm going to put this ball back. think I might have to. That ring finger is just a hair tighter than I like it, but I can actually that feels pretty good. So. But anyway. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut down this eternal lamination and see what that looks like. It's really hard to see in this light. It's really hard to see, period. See if we can, it looks bluer on camera than it actually is, but that's kind of, you can see that, and you know, the weird thing about this is that plug right there, I put 10 drops of pink in. That's only got like 2 or 3 drops of purple in it. It's got 10 drops of pink because this purple is not actually purple. It's a whole lot bluer of a purple than it looks like. So I'm going to use my I'm going to use the big bit. All I have to do is get this lined up. So, take that over to the table. I'm going to shave that down and then get the adhesive off of the ball. And sorry if I'm not answering, or sorry that I'm not answering questions. Hopefully I've got people in there taking care of that. But so no matter how sharp your bit is, there's always going to be some grain on the top of the hole. So I found the easiest thing to do to kind of smooth it out. Otherwise, it's going to be on the resurfacing machine for too long. If you just kind of shave this grain down a little bit, because if you put it on a resurfacing machine, it's going to grind the entire ball down just to smooth this little area out. And if you don't shave this grain down first, it ends up having to be on there a whole lot longer than it really needs to be, just to end up getting this smooth. kind of go to get it kind of, the bevel knives are really pretty sharp, but if you just kind of, now I've got the grain shade down, so I'm just kind of lightly going back over the top to even out any kind of ridges or Alright, so now what I'm going to do is use a little bit of fingernail polish remover to get this adhesive off, because if you don't get the adhesive off, it tends to gum up your sanding pads. And this also gives you a really good idea before you finish the ball what your color is going to look like. So it's still a little bright, hard to tell, but I think you can see the kind of the swirls in there. The color is going to be pretty nice once I get this finished. So since we're on stream, I'll go on ahead and finish it now just to see what it looks like. But this was a, I mean, this is a gift right here. I mean, having the whole in a dark color, number one, something that was pretty easy to match. One solid color that I'm working with, so this is easy. So, come over here to my ball spinner. My giant bottle of silver pearl powder that came in today. Sanding pads. I'm gonna find my 500 grit pad, wherever that ran off to. 2,000, 4,000, 3,000, 2,000, 4,000. Oh, there they are. 500 grit. So, a little bit of water. And I'm just applying light pressure here. If you do, because all I'm trying to do is smooth this off. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm just doing, this is called a spot resurface. Most of the time when you do plug work, you want to just resurface the entire ball. But if you do it right, and in this case I don't have a resurfacing machine, I'm not going to resurface the entire ball. Mostly because I also like factory shine too, so I want to screw that up as little as possible. All I'm trying to do is smooth this off here. That's all I'm trying to do. So if I put too much pressure on the pad, I'm going to get some really deep, ingrained sanding lines, especially with the, with being 500 grit. Normally if it was on a resurfacing machine, they have what they call the diamond pads, which are about 100 grit. And then they have a couple different steps up from that. Of course, they have sanding grit or sanding pads and grits of 180, 360, 500, 1,000, 2,000, depending on, some of them have 1,500 grit pads, but these are pretty rough. And so if I were to hammer down too hard on this, I'm gonna get some really deep lines in the ball, which I'm not trying to do. I am just trying to smooth the top of it. Now I'm going to reorient it a little bit here too, because at the very center on top, it doesn't really get, the very center on top at the focal, or at the, the very center point of where the ball's rotating, the axis you might say, the axis of the plug or whatever, it doesn't really get shaved down with the rest of the ball. So I'm just going to tilt it a little bit, do it again so that we can get everything kind of smoothly sanded down here. And you'll notice that I've folded this up into a quarter because I'm just trying to focus on this one particular spot. And if I held the whole pad on there, it'd cover, you know, a quarter of the ball. So I'm just concerned with smoothing down this one little spot here. And if it looks like, yep, it looks and feels like that's been smoothed down pretty good, so I will step up to an 1,000 pad. That ran off too. I have another 1,000 pad. It's 3,000 pad, and I need that in a minute. Not sure if I have another 1,000 pad or not. 2,000, 2,000. I have more pads on the way. 1,000 pad. I'm gonna quarter this thing again too. Same idea. Now we're just trying to bring the surface up. If you go straight from 500 to just putting polish right on the top of that, you're gonna have lines in it. So right now, again, a little bit extra water. Water's a lubricant, so it helps it come out with a smoother surface. So you'll get a chalkier result if you dry sand something by hand than you will if you wet sand it on a spinner. I did a video on that actually. Take 3,000 pad, finish it off. Reorient this thing here a little bit. And then once again, I'm just trying to smooth it. Just trying to blend the surface. I'll go out just a little bit further to try to blend the edges in. Pretty good, so I think it's ready to go ahead and shine back up. Get my polish out here. Doesn't take a whole lot. Just kind of work that into the towel so it doesn't spray everywhere. And now this, I'm going to add some pressure. Feather the lines out just a little bit further. And we're done. Put it back over here in the light here. So that's what we're looking at. And obviously there's a little bit of pitting on top. That's fine. That's, you know, fairly normal. It's a fairly close color match. It could have been a little bit brighter. I could have added like a drop of white in it or something. But I mean, we're talking about, you know, being right up on top of this thing. So as soon as I back out a little, you just don't even see it. So, I mean, that's realistically, when you see a ball sitting on a rack, I mean, that's what you're looking at. So unless you're looking directly at it and know it's there, that's a success in my book. So pretty happy with that. The fingers are going to be pretty easy to do too. I don't know if I'll have enough time to get those started at the moment here. Or actually, you know, just go ahead and I'll go ahead and do these because this is going to be easy. So, once again, never, ever, ever, ever is there any reason to buy round plug dams. Never. So I drilled when you go to drill, or when you go to plug finger holes, it is absolutely imperative that you drill out the bevel on the top of the hole. If there is any, there should be, but if there's not any, if the ball's been used at all, there's probably some dings in the edge or some blemishes or whatever else. You want to make sure that they're sharp and straight up and down. Because if there is any kind of round edge to the side of the hole, the plug up there, it's going to fill to the top of the hole, then you're going to cut that flush off with the ball. Well, if there's any kind of roundness on the side of the hole here, you're going to end up with very, very thin plugs. So number one, it's going to cut like crap, it's going to finish like crap, and it's probably going to chip off later. So you always want to make sure that the holes you're plugging are fresh cut and clean. So when I drill the bevel out, I just don't drill the bevel out. I drill a whole lot further down in these holes to freshen up the sides, because the insides are still going to get dirty. They're going to have grip and glue residue and whatever else on them. So you want fresh, cut, clean holes before you put the plug in. Another very important thing to do, once you put the plug dam on there, make sure it's sealed all the way around. You can't just place it down on there and, you know, kind of gently tap it. You got to make sure that this plug dam is sealed all the way around, because there's nothing worse than pouring the plug, coming back the next day and finding a streak of plug running down the side of the ball and the holes kind of indented and not filled up enough. Because cleaning off the ball, number one, after it's hardened, you have to take a bevel knife to it and chip that stuff off. Then you have to drill the holes out. Then you have to replug them. It's bad. It's just bad. So I'm going to make a pretty silvery purple here. I don't want to make it too bright, because if you make it, again, the thumb hole here turned out just a little bit dark, but you can't see it. I mean, you literally can't see it from this angle. I have to get, you know, I have to get in there and put it in the right light and whatever else. So this is the eternal domination. So once again, you know, that's pretty dang good. If it blends in, that is the point. If it actually looks good too, like that, that's a bonus. That is okay. That's a 7.5. This is a solid 9. That is a solid 9 right there, because the goal is you can't see it unless you're looking for it. So what we're going to do is I'm probably just going to do one drop of purple, a whole lot of silver. just to make it kind of blend in, because there's a lot of, again, there's up here, there's a little bit of orange on the outside edge, but there's so much swirling here that when there is swirling, you don't really want it to be a solid color. Even if it is one color, even if you don't try to mix up a dark purple and a silver purple and orange and whatever else and get that all swirled, if there's just general swirling in that area, it's going to make it blend in. So that's really what we're going for here. There's no reason on this one to be super crazy. Just not so about it here. So fingers normally take 2 full pumps of plug. Some people don't use the pumps, but I find it to actually measure truer. Because if you're measuring out of a cup, which some people swear by, well, you're losing a lot of material in that cup. Some people, you know, have that calibrated or figured out, but I actually trust the pumps a whole lot more than I do measuring in a cup. However, there are cups that have lines on them. So if you need like an ounce of the compound and a half an ounce of the hardener, then you just, so I need, 2 ounces of the compound, 1 ounce of the hardener, 3 ounces total, and there's a 3-ounce line on the cup. So that makes that really easy actually, but those are a little bit more expensive. So what I'm gonna do, and because this is a clearer or kind of more silvery, vibrant, I guess darker color here, I'm going to use my Vice color kit, because once again I've shown, okay, that didn't work. So as I've shown people before, the Storm color kit is just a whole bunch of flats. They're flat, opaque colors. So these are really good for that High Road Max. I used the yellow and the green, and just kind of, the brighter green was a little bit more yellow and the darker green was a little bit more green. These work perfect for the flat color balls. ProMotion, High Road Max, Axiom, stuff like that. These colors are perfect. But when you're trying to do kind of a pearlescent color, they suck. So that's what the Vice colors are for. So I've got Vice Purple. So I'm going to put 1 drop of that in, and I'm going to add a buttload of silver. We're going to see what the color looks like. So 1 drop of purple. And we're going to start with 10 drops of silver and see where that leaves us here.